like to call the May meeting of the Raleigh Stormwater Management Advisory Commission to order. We have two requests for excused absences today. Ms. Talavera had previously requested an absence, and Reverend Taylor texted this morning to let us know he'd had a family medical emergency and needs an excused absence. We have a motion to excuse those absences.
So moved.
Okay. Who was the motion there? Is that David?
Sure.
Yeah.
Second from Jonathan.
I'll take second.
All right. All in favor? Good. Motion passes. Next up on the agenda, the meeting minutes from the April meeting. Trust everyone's had a chance to look over those. Any comments, discussion? Okay. Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve those?
So moved.
Mark, and a second. Ken, all in favor? Okay. Moving right along. As we talked about last time, I'm going to try a couple of things a little bit differently in this meeting. First is we're going to be putting public comment first. And then Ken, you'll be on deck for an introduction. Take a moment to introduce yourself to the group. So wanted to make sure you had at least a moment to prepare. Wayne, I understand we do have one person who has requested to make comment today.
Yes, Mr. Murphy has requested to make a comment. I don't see anything in chat. Mr. Murphy, if you could send me a quick chat to Wayne Miles, or even all attendees would work. If you are prepared, would like to send me something to read, or if you would like to be promoted to a panelist and speak, that is an option open to you as well. And anyone else on the call who would like to speak, please send me a chat. Okay, I got a chat from Mr. Murphy that he would like to speak. Colin, if he could be promoted, please.
While you're doing that, hopefully Mr. Murphy can hear me. If you would, please just state your name and address. And I don't think we have anyone else signed up to speak, but if you would succinctly share your comments, we would appreciate hearing.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Denny Murphy. I live at 2338 Airline Drive, Raleigh, 27607. I am a former chairman of the Raleigh Environmental Board, his first chairman actually, and just wanted to mention, as we continue to finalize or fine-tune, they'll never be finalized, the low impact development impacts, especially on stormwater, that in 2011, the EAB sent a letter to City Council addressing the need to revise city standards to allow green infrastructure, low impact development by taking some of the language out of the city manuals and the city codes that was basically promulgated years ago to get water off property as fast as possible and into the streams. And of course, that was 20th century thinking. We've moved beyond that. But one of the first things mentioned in the report, in the letter to council in 2011, was to remove the requirement for curb and gutter from the city manual. This sort of got the ball rolling. We went through several things, and we ended up teaming with SMAC. It was put in SMAC's hand. We did a workshop, combined EAB and SMAC, and ended up, that of course went to the language committee down the road, and evolved into the low impact development stuff we have now. But I'd like to point out that the original request, and that is the removal of the requirement for gutters, is still in that's still in the city manual. And while curbs are required for safety and maintenance and vehicle control and all that, gutters have one purpose, and that is to channel water as quickly away as possible. And that's the start of the whole problem about controlling run water. Once you channel it, you have to disperse it or put it into a flume or retain it or something. But the easiest thing to do is to, well, this basic mindset that we wanted to set was that just not channel it to begin with. Allow sheet flow to vegetated areas, allow pervious verges, and all that. And that's my only comment, is that after all these years, 10 years, the city manual still requires, the development manual still requires curb and gutter to be installed. And that's basically my comment. I would like to see the city work about taking out that requirement, which I think will, on smaller projects and projects with maybe not the sophisticated developers who look at the incentives, the low impact development stuff and pay attention to those. If it's still in the city manual, it's a basic for a lot of people. And I'd like to change the mindset of requiring gutters everywhere and channeling water as quickly as possible into the streams and away from whatever property you're trying to protect. That's basically my comment. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy, for sharing your background and experience with the commission. I suppose we can, I don't know if there's any follow-up we want to include maybe in the, maybe that's a GSI committee item, something like that.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, that's what I was going to suggest. I think that'd be a good item to take up with the GSI committee. And in the GSI plan, there is a recommendation to revisit UDO changes and look for additional updates. And I believe that would, this suggestion would fall into the category of something that could be re-looked at as part of that process.
Thank you, Wayne. We have anyone else lined up for comment?
I do not see anyone else in the chat.
Okay. So well, thanks again, Mr. Murphy, for speaking up and
You're welcome.
sharing that with us.
I'll go ahead and mute. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up, we have commission and staff updates. And we'll, I guess, begin with you, Ken. I think the idea here was, especially since we haven't been able to meet in person, we should share a little bit more about each other in these meetings. And if you don't mind taking a moment of privilege, Ken, just share a little bit about yourself.
Sure, thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, well, good afternoon. My name is Ken Carper. This is actually I think my 6th year on the SMAC commission. It's been a pleasure. It's been enjoyable. There's a lot of interesting discussion and learn a lot each time I come here. And I like interacting with the group, although it has been sort of strained this past year. And actually, I was vice chair one year, and I forgot the year that was, probably a couple of years ago. I ran vice chair. I'm a civil engineer by trade. Been in the business about 30 years. Working in Florida, North Carolina, and Texas. I work for BGE Incorporated and do a lot of things related to stormwater and transportation, water quality, and so forth, stormwater management. And actually, I was employed, and not many people may know this. Some of you do, I know, but I was employed by the city of Raleigh full time for almost 2 years back in 2013, I believe it was. Made a lot of friends there and great group back then as well. So Any questions about that? Any discussion you guys want to have on that?
Thank you, Ken. I think a lot of us here today knew your history and know your past service with SMAC. So appreciate you going first in this trial of getting to know each other. Too bad some of the younger members or newer members, well, I guess we only have two out today, but thanks for taking that moment.
No problem. Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have the any comments from the first meeting of the Planning Commission and SMAC liaisons?
Yes, I'll start and then turn it over to Mr. Stansel if he would like to add comments. We did have a coordination meeting between myself, Mr. Stansel, the Planning Commission liaison, Commissioner Fox, and the planning staff member, Travis Crane, and discussed options for continued coordination. And there was no formal meeting on a regular basis that was proposed, but it was agreed that the liaisons would monitor agendas for each of the two commissions to participate in items and share those items back to their respective commissions as would be appropriate. Mr. Stansel, would you like to add any thoughts or other items that you have related to that?
Sure. Just wanted to mention that if any member of SMAC sees something in the pipeline for the Planning Commission that they would like me to communicate to them, I certainly would be glad to do so. Or if any member desires to reach out to discuss anything related, certainly would be open to that as well. I appreciate the commission giving me this role, and I hope that we can advance some GSI and get people thinking about stormwater.
Thank you, Mr. Stansel. And if the chair and the commission agrees, I would propose that we leave this bullet item in its current location on the agenda as a recurring item, just to prompt us to see if there are items that you all would like to bring up to Mr. Stansel, or items Mr. Stansel would have to report out, if that works for everyone.
I think that would be good. What is the best way for SMAC members to stay abreast of the Planning Commission's upcoming agenda items and things like that? Should we sign ourselves up for newsletters like we have for, like I get a SMAC email that's separate from my email updates as a commission member? You have any recommendations on that, Wayne?
Yes, there is a subscription service, as you'd mentioned, that you can go to the website, and there's a whole variety of distribution lists that anyone can sign up for. And one is for the Planning Commission, that you could put your email in and check the box, and you can check as many boxes as you want for as many items, but you'll start getting more emails the more boxes you check. But the Planning Commission is one that you can keep abreast of items there. You know, if it would be helpful, we'd be glad to also have a standing item that we could talk about. Maybe not every rezoning case, as obviously there's a slew of them that occur, but if there's one in particular that maybe stands out as being a little unusual or having particular stormwater impacts, we could give the commission a brief update, either written or verbally, as part of this agenda item as well. But just, you know, for example, this past Tuesday, City Council did deny a rezoning request on Trailwood Drive, and one of the issues that they raised was it is in an environmentally sensitive area near Walnut Creek. There were concerns about stormwater and the floodplain that were raised. So, for example, that may be one that we would at least mention for awareness from the commission if you're hearing about it from citizens or the community. So let us know if that would be helpful as well. We could pull out key rezoning cases and give a summary of those.
I think that would be very helpful. Anybody else?
Be
Okay,
glad to. Be glad to.
thank you. All right, Wayne, why don't you take it away with the next couple of items?
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have some staff updates. I'm pleased to announce we have 3 internal promotions taking place recently. The first one, Laura Johnson, has been promoted to our Stormwater Control Measure Inspections Program Coordinator. And she had previously been in that same program as a support staff and is taking over the supervisor role. And this group manages compliance of privately owned stormwater devices required on new and redevelopment projects. And Laura is an NC State alumni from the College of Natural Resources and a Raleigh native, and she's been with the city for 4 years. So glad to have Laura taking on that new role. The next one I'd like to announce, Kelly Daniel is taking on a new role as, and this is a newly created role of flood early warning system engineer. So the commission's heard a lot about our new FUSE or flood early warning system program. Kelly will lead that group now. He's been with the city for 22 years, the last 19 of which have been with Stormwater, served in a number of roles, most recently as the business service manager. And in that role, Kelly started taking on a lot of our FUSE related responsibilities. So this will be I think a very natural shift for Kelly. He's already very involved in FUSE, but this will allow him to dedicate full time his attention toward that very important program that is developing. And then third, Daniel Kirsch is taking on another newly created role of supervisor of the dam and stormwater control measure inspections group. And this new role will be responsible for keeping all city-owned dams and SCMs in compliance and properly maintained as part of our asset management program. Daniel's been with the city for 24 years, and he's played a variety of roles, including most recently the industrial stormwater permit compliance lead, and he's also been with Transportation Field Services. So we're very pleased to see 3 folks stepping up into new roles, and very, very excited about those opportunities.
Congratulations, all of you.
Thank you. Yep, agree. Congratulations. 3, they'll all do well, I know. Moving on to the high priority topics, we have some exciting news. I'll let Ben Brown share with you on the flood prone regulations, flood prone area regulations.
Yes, super exciting for all the ordinance freaks out there. No, just kidding. The council approved the floodplain text change that you guys, you all at SMAC had worked a lot on. And they approved that Tuesday night at the public hearing, and it was a unanimous vote. So that was very exciting. Couple things to note that we had shared with you before is that the effective date will be April 1st of 2022, and that's an effort to line that up with the new FEMA preliminary maps, which we are hoping will be on the ground and established by April 1st, 2022. We're hoping even by January they'll be approved by FEMA and the effective date will be out there. So that's kind of where that is, and that was very exciting. There were some negative comments brought up, but Mayor Pro Tem Stewart had a very good speech about why this is needed and why this should go on. So if you guys are interested, I would definitely recommend checking out that video. If you haven't already seen it, just skip to way towards the end because it was at the end of the meeting. So the other update, I don't know if Wayne wants to jump
Yeah,
in
please, go ahead, Ben. Continue, yeah.
to this, but I don't have too much update, is for downtown South. We are trying to update you all on a monthly basis because this was our largest rezoning that was approved in December of 2020. And they were going to be doing a lot of conditions related to stormwater for GSI and downstream analysis and things like that. We don't really have any updates, so that's what I'm coming in to talk about. The last we had talked was at the end of March with the designers about how to kind of set up their downstream analysis and fine tune it. And we were also in that meeting as well was the engineer that was hired by the Partners for Environmental Justice. So they're trying to include everyone's comments that they can to kind of get that an analysis done in a very transparent way, but we just haven't heard anything from them this month. And actually just for an internal update, staff is meeting across multiple departments on a monthly basis as well to make sure there's not anything going on at downtown South that maybe they're talking to one department and they're not talking to all of us. So we're trying to kind of stay on top of this one because we know it's a very important project and will have a big effect on Raleigh. So.
Great, thank you, Ben. And I'll take the last item. One other council action. Since the last commission meeting, the council did review the commission's recommendation this was the first recommendation made under the revised lake management evaluation program policy. And as you recall, the commission recommended that the upper lake at Durant Nature Preserve be revised and converted to a wetland type of water quality device, and that recommendation was taken to council, and city council unanimously approved that recommendation as well. So that's great news. That is, we have that project funded in our CIP, and now we are moving forward in collaboration with Parks and Recreation and Cultural Resources to move that project forward. So another commission recommendation well received. And lastly, I have no items on the notices prior to construction to report at this time. Mr. Chair, that's all I have.
Thank you. And I'll just say, Wayne and your team did a great job with that presentation of the Upper Lake recommendations to council. And I'm very thankful also to Barbara Dahl at NC State for speaking to council members about the process for the alternatives evaluation. I think that was extremely compelling to the council members that spoke with her.
Thank you.
Any other commissioner comments at this point? Okay. Next up, we have another update on the plan for advancing green stormwater infrastructure in Raleigh. Glad that Mark can join us today for this update. Mark or Kevin, I'll let you, I guess.
Yeah,
Kevin,
let me get unmuted so I can start things. I'll do a brief introduction, and for the people attending out there that may not be familiar with this item, this is something that the city and SMAC has been working on for some time. As our citizen that spoke with her today mentioned, goes back as far as 2011 and probably at least another 5 years before that. And what GSI is green stormwater infrastructure, formerly known as LID or low impact development. And it's a philosophy of a way of managing stormwater at its source using natural methods as opposed to collecting it, putting it in a big pond and treating it or releasing it at a slow rate. It's also known as dispersed stormwater management, where you try to address that stormwater where it's generated. It's either infiltrated in the soil, reused, passed through vegetation, other methods to slow it down and treat it. Been around for a lot of years, growing in population or popularity over time. especially in areas where they have water quality concerns. Ways back, the City Council requested that the Stormwater Management Advisory Committee look into developing a plan to implement GSI or LID. They originally looked at making that mandatory, and then it was decided that we need to make it a voluntary program and incentivize it. And so what staff has done is enlisted Tetra Tech as a consultant to assist the city in looking at the low impact development, green stormwater infrastructure issue, and work on developing that plan to move it forward. What's been done to date is they've looked at city ordinances that are impeding the use of green stormwater infrastructure, look at ways to incentivize the use of it, looked at ways that the city can lead by example by implementing green stormwater infrastructure. And to date, we have developed a plan of how to move that forward and implement green stormwater infrastructure. We've also prepared a draft memo to send that item to council. That has been brought to other department heads by Wayne and Blair Hinkle to get their feedback, and we've had some positive response, at least from the planning department. So what we're going to look at today is to review that document for implementing that program, looked at the draft memo that has been prepared, and hopefully, if we can possibly do it, we'd like to vote on that today, if we can, to send that to council so we can get that to on the agenda for their June meeting. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Kevin and let him cover the details of where we are and what we hope to accomplish. All yours, Kevin.
Thank you, Mark. And just could someone reply that you can hear me?
We got you, Kevin.
Okay, and on your screen is a document that you recognize. Can you see that? Good. Okay, thank you. Appreciate another opportunity to bring this to you as we, I think, come down the home stretch, not with advancing GSI, but with advancing the commission's charge to come back to City Council with a plan. And we've been working on this for some time, as you know, since 2019. Slowed a good deal by COVID, but we're moving ahead as nonetheless. With us today as a panelist also is Trevor Clements, who's been assisting for many years now, 6 or 7 years since we've kicked off the more intensive aspect of our GSI initiative. The plan for City Council is, in our view, in staff's view, really close. The Commission may choose to vote to endorse it and allow staff to work on some of the fill in the blanks and format and other things to get it ready to send to council, or you may choose to carry it on to the next meeting. It really consists of 2 documents. The first, I won't spend a lot of time with because it's the same as you've seen before. That's the one on the screen now. Same, I think, word for word as we reviewed during the meeting in April. But we'll just walk through it very quickly just to go over the headings and how it's organized. There are 6 city recommended city action items, each of which has these headings of desired outcomes and actions, and also observed challenges and needed resources. All 6 are organized in that way. And the first is for the city to lead by example, adopting and implementing a formal city policy that requires evaluation of GSI on the city's development and improvement projects. This one is looking internally to the city to implement GSI, and for the benefit of those projects, but also for the benefit of demonstrating to the private sector and others how it works, and that it works well and should be undertaken by others. An important aspect of this action is we are planning to hire to fill a position called with other duties as well, but also called GSI advocate to assist development plan applicants in integrating GSI into their designs and moving through the review and approval process. But there are many other aspects to this that I won't take the time right now to review, but would be glad to answer questions. Move on to the second one, and that's facing outward to the private sector, and that's for us to provide information, support, recognition, incentives to private developers and their designers for them to incorporate GSI into their projects. Again, the GSI advocate is important in reaching out to the private developer and designer, both in terms of technical input and moving through the permit and approval process. We also have in this item to convene a stakeholder group to get some feedback and input to how we can better incorporate GSI into the plan review and permitting process. Going ahead to the third one, and that's for us to increase awareness of the potential benefits of GSI in development and redevelopment projects as conditions in the city's cases for property rezoning. This was in our range of view even before the downtown south rezoning came through, but was certainly raised everyone's attention to how important that opportunity might be for advancing the use of GSI. Fourth city action is looking internal again. In this case, that when we're preparing long-range plans such as roadway corridor plans, neighborhood plans, park plans, to make sure we routinely include GSI in those plans early and have the right people at the table in preparing those plans so that GSI is on the ground floor as these plans move through the implementation process. Fifth one is revisiting those 20 or so text changes that were made to the UDO adopted back in 2017, but begun well before 2017 for their effectiveness. And how well are they working? How can they be enhanced? What others maybe should be brought forward for new text changes? And this would be done in consultation with lots of other city staff, their work groups, and also bring in outside stakeholders, including developers and designers. And the sixth and last one is once we have GSI on the ground, in this case, we're talking about a city-owned GSI, let's make sure we are maintaining it properly for its good function and appearance. So I'll move on to the memo, which is the second part of the plan, and this will be the first time we've reviewed that memo in a commission meeting, unless there's some comment or question on this document, the table document. Okay, and we certainly can come back to it. Okay. Now this draft memo has come together pretty quickly, although there were pieces in progress for quite a few months. I guess you can say we exceeded our budget on this, in that we set out to limit it to 4 pages, and we just found it almost undoable to really cover what we felt like we needed to present to City Council in just 4 pages. So it's a lot longer than that as it stands right now. I'll walk through it. Certainly won't go through all of it, but try to hit some highlights and explain some of the font and shading and what it means. But we're setting up the background here. Mark went through a good bit of that. Mr. Murphy touched on some of the history as well. But the more recent history started in May of 2019, and then in August of 2019, some redirection to the commission. That just sets that up, and the gray shading anticipates that we'll make attachments to this memo with those items. Where we can, we would prefer to link to documents, and we'll see that as well. Then there's a very brief summary of what I just walked through in the table, really just repeating the headings and referring the reader of the memo to that table. And then some history and context. And some of it is literally history. Other aspects of what we've written here are examples of how we have implemented and progressed with implementing a GSI. The turquoise shading indicates where we intend to provide a link in the memo for that document to come up, and there are a number of them. One thing we've felt it's important to convey in this memo is that the city plays a lot of roles with properties and with stormwater from those properties, where these are the 4 that we've keyed on. The city's a developer, the city's a regulator and enforcer, the city is an advocate, and these might be the same person. They're often different people though, with different missions. And we're also a regulated entity. We have a permit, as most of you know, with the state for discharge of stormwater, and then we have some delegated responsibilities under that permit to enforce on others outside the city, but also to enforce on ourselves internally. One thing I'll call attention to here, this entry, this insert in red track changes in front of you right now was not in the version of this draft memo that you received last Friday. It's since been added as we connected some dots in reviewing a document prepared by the Pew Charitable Trust and the North Carolina Coastal Federation. I emailed that to you a few days ago, and it has many. It's recommendations for a statewide advancing of what they're calling nature-based strategies for stormwater. Very similar to what we're calling GSI, but we thought it would be beneficial for the city council to know that statewide document has been issued by some well-respected organizations, and to call attention to the parallels between that document and what is in the document being recommended by in the recommendations being made by the commission. So this is an introduction to that document. Again, the turquoise indicates a link where the reader could go to that website and look over that document if they chose to. So it's sort of calling an audible here to the commission, since you haven't seen this before, but we recommend we add this to the memo. And there are a few other additions similar to that later. And from here, we move on to differentiate between GSI on our own development projects. Again, the role of the city as a developer, and use of GSI in private development. And so we go on to recognize what we have accomplished by way of our website, fact sheets, standard details drawings, and linking to these where we can. And then where we've implemented GSI on the ground on certain projects, such as Sandy Forks Road, Fox Road, and linking to those websites. So if a very interested reader wants more, they can go to those. And also important changes that we've made and are proposing to make are policies and practices for our own development projects. And here's where we introduce the GSI policy, the city GSI policy that the commission has been helping us develop, and the guidelines that go with that policy. This is after having introduced the Pew and North Carolina Coastal Federation document. We now take the opportunity to make a few connections between the commission's recommendations and recommendations made in that document. So we're recommending this insert in red as well. Here under connect to city council vision plans, at the tail end of what's now the draft city GSI policy, there are a list of environmental, I believe they're called EP environmental policies and actions that are in the city's comprehensive plan. I've just kept them in that document to sort of go along for the ride as reminders for our purposes, but I'll separate those out and we'll make that a separate attachment to this document to show connections to the city's broader vision plans. And again, the report that Tetra Tech prepared in testing out the draft policy and the policy guide that will be linked as well. And you might recall Tetra Tech applied the draft policy and the guide and the GSI cost tool to two projects. One is the downtown civic campus, and the second is expansion of Chavis Park. Continuing on through, then we move to GSI on private development and the importance of encouraging a GSI through ordinances and policies. Talk about what was done in 2017 that we anticipate being another link. See a matrix of those 20 or so changes, and some reference to Green Raleigh Review, which has not been used thus far, and we've had only a few inquiries about it. One of the recommendations is to revisit that, but also tying in another with the Pew document here that is also among their recommendations to do the same kind of thing that Green Raleigh Review was striving to do. So we're not coming up with this in a vacuum. Sometimes we're initiating it, but for the most part, we're trying things that other folks have tried and thought of, some with success and some without. Again, another reference to the Pew document under education and training, which we have done. We've had several workshops for private designers to come in and help learn about incorporating GSI into their designs. And we touch on the rezoning opportunity here as well, and cross reference or make reference to the downtown south rezoning case, and then that will close it out. There being a good many attachments or appendices, we thought we'd provide a list here at the end of the memo. So quite a lot here, quite a lot for you to have taken in on fairly short notice, but we think we're in pretty good shape to to carry this to city council, and we're here to discuss it with you, take your questions, comments, and move forward if we can. Mr. Chair, that's what I have for now.
Thank you, Kevin. I'll invite commissioners to ask questions, make comments. Could you speak to us? So, did anybody speak up?
This is David. I was just going to mention that I'm quite pleased with it. I think it might be premature for me to mention now, but I am today ready to move forward to a vote.
I would agree with that and support moving forward.
Should I take that as a motion and a second?
Sure.
Yes, we can do that.
All right.
If that's a motion, I'll call it a second.
Okay. Yeah, just a bit of discussion. We've talked about having an advocate in the stormwater program to work with other departments to encourage the city to use GSI in its projects. It sounds like that's going to be a pretty big job. As I think about it from my own experience trying to get other people that I don't control to change the way they do business to suit what I think is best. But I think this will be an important first step to have city council bless this. Will add a lot of weight to it. I don't know if you have anything you want to speak about in terms of, that advocate's role or the process for working with other city departments and to encourage the use of GSI.
Wayne, may I kick that to you?
Yeah, I'll be glad to jump in on that. And in fact, and Ben can give an update if he wishes. We are in the process of interviewing for that position right now. It will be a challenging role. We're looking for someone ideally who has a good bit of GSI and LID experience already, and can be that advocate. As you said, Mr. Chair, it will be a challenging position. That position will, though, reside in our plan review group, because what we want to do is jointly advocate for GSI, but also get buy-in from our plan review group for when those GSI plans come in, that they will meet our requirements and standards, so that it's a fairly seamless process to get the GSI approved as part of the plan review as well. Ben, anything you'd like to add on that? That plan review group is under Ben's supervision.
No, I mean, I don't have too much to add. As Wayne stated, we are looking for candidates now and interviewing candidates now, and we have a few good ones, and I hope we can get those to the finish line. But as Wayne stated, it's in our mind was going to be somebody that was going to have to be associated with the regulatory side, so it's not just a planning mandate kind of passed down to like the regulatory side to kind of deal with. It would be more something that was ensconced in that side to kind of be that internal advocate for. And we're definitely looking for somebody that's had experience kind of with these projects and getting them off the ground, and not just like reading about them and that sort of thing. So that's why it's been challenging to find some good a good qualified pool of applicants, which from a governmental side, I'll just complain for a little bit that it's been tough to hire any people right now, because the private side is hiring fast and furiously right now. So, but we are working, and I hope to get our dream candidate.
Very good. So the memo that's been provided states the purpose is to respond to a directive from City Council. Do you think we're asking for any additional action by City Council or hoping for that?
If I may jump in, Kevin and Mr. Chair,
Please do.
we see the most likely and probably beneficial recommendation would be to send this to the city's Growth and Natural Resources Committee of council, under council, and that would provide a forum by which we could go through in a little bit more detail the elements of the recommended plan, get any additional feedback from council to finalize the plan. And then ideally, once they are comfortable with it, could provide an endorsement for the plan moving forward. So we're open to input from the commission, but that was going to be our suggested recommendation to council, is to send it to their GNR committee for further evaluation. And I do think that would be beneficial for us to get their feedback.
And in terms of timing, if the commission were to vote to move this on today, it's possible we could have this. Wayne, please speak if I'm missing the June 1st date. It's possible we could get it on the agenda for the June 1st meeting, but if not, June 15th is certainly doable.
Right.
Okay. Any other commissioners have any comments? It looks like we have a motion to move this forward to City Council and a second. So I guess I'll call that to a vote. All in favor of moving this forward to present it to City Council? Any opposed? Very good.
Mr. Chair, was
Thank you.
that unanimous? I had trouble seeing all the hands.
Let's see, one more. Wrestling with multiple monitors here.
Sorry.
Why don't we just do that? Let's see.
I think just verbally would be okay if anyone did vote to oppose.
Yeah, did anyone vote opposed? Okay, we'll call that unanimous then.
Excellent. And just for clarification, any concerns with the proposed recommendation to council to send this to their GNR committee for further review?
I did not have any. Anyone else? Now, I asked the question simply to understand what the next step would be. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate your support.
Thanks to the committee and Kevin and all the staff who worked so hard on this. It's been a long process, and I'm glad to see it moving forward.
Thank you, and thanks for Tetra Tech support as well.
Yes, a long and thoughtful process, so appreciate that. Okay. Next up on the agenda, we are running a little ahead of schedule. We have a Watershed Plan item. Let's see, get back to the top of my agenda here. An update on Watershed Master Planning and Community Engagement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Commission. This is Scott Bryant. I'm going to give a brief introduction and turn this over to Barbara, our Watershed Planner, here very soon, and our leader of our Watershed program. So we're excited to be talking about Watershed Master Planning. And as the Commission might remember, we're seeking to really accelerate the renewal and the refreshing and really the updating in a fully integrated way watershed studies across the city of Raleigh. We're embarking upon the Hair Snipe watershed here first, and Barbara's going to tell you some reasons why we've chosen that one to begin this process. At the same time, we continue our integrated approach, our framework to how we do these studies citywide. And we're also going to be working very closely with the Office of Equity and Inclusion on ensuring community input, engagement, and that we're developing solutions in concert with the community. So really some key aspects about this project we're very excited about. If you even think of EI squared, if you will, this study is going to be equitable, inclusive, and integrated. And so we're going to talk about that here. Kelly, if we could go to the next slide. So again, we're embarking upon the Hair Snipe study as our first case study, if you will, our watershed that we're going to apply this framework and help really to develop the framework. Our agenda is 4 items. I'm going to cover very briefly the first, and Barbara will cover very well the remaining items. We're going to talk about the vision for the watershed program. Again, how we are prioritizing Hair Snipe and all of the watersheds in Raleigh to be restudied in an integrated way. Give you some details on the scope of the current project for Hair Snipe and then next steps going forward. And we look forward to bringing this information back to the commission as we go throughout the project, and certainly as we find some initial results and get ready to move forward with improvements that will come from the study. We always like to look at our stormwater mission that we've developed in concert with you and with our council, and that is to manage stormwater to preserve and protect life, support healthy natural resources, and complement sustainable growth for the community. So if we think about watershed planning and from a watershed perspective, this mission fits so well into that. Everything that we're going to be doing in this study is looking to advance that mission. And so I think you'll see that throughout as we look at projects that support quality of life, our natural resources, and provide for that sustainable growth and development. From the mission, we've also developed a vision, where the stormwater program wants to be as we advance that mission. And you've heard this from Wayne several times, but also we're going to apply it readily to this Hair Snipe study in our watershed program. We want to be the smartest stormwater program possible to economically and equitably achieve our mission. In short, be stormwater smart. So we envision this Hair Snipe watershed study advancing that vision. Again, applying that philosophy to all of our programs. One of those circles there deals with watershed planning and asset management that Barbara leads. We're certainly going to apply that smart philosophy to all of our programs in a very integrated way. So as we think about working smarter, what does that mean for watershed planning? We're really looking at ensuring that the data is accurate and robust. We want to engage the community throughout the study. Even today, as we're introducing the study, welcoming input, we're going to be listening very closely. And we've used the term integrated many times. We use that term in our project prioritization. And we're going to use it for our watershed planning as well. We want solutions that advance all the stormwater goals as well as overall city and community goals. These could be for water quality. These could be for flood hazard reduction, asset management, stream restoration, lake management, just as we've talked in this meeting here, other goals as well, nutrient management, many other goals. And as we do those improvements, do those in a way that fit the community needs and the city's needs. It's been a little over a year ago now, but the team got together as we were rekindling the thought of advancing watershed plans and really accelerating those if the resources allow. And we asked the question, what's going to be success? What does it look like? What are some of the critical success factors? As we got into that discussion, we started thinking about what does it mean for watershed planning, but the team's discussion really extended to the overall stormwater program as well. And so we just want to share some of those with you here. We're going to apply these to the Hair Snipe project in our watershed planning program, but many of these apply broadly across the stormwater program. And here they are. We want to clearly understand the level of service needs and expectations of the community and in these watershed areas. set priorities, resources, and budget accordingly. Certainly meet or exceed all regulatory requirements, be they local, state, or federal. There's the integrated term again, deliver integrated services and products through collaboration. And that's also going to ensure a high quality product. And oftentimes we can leverage resources, sometimes saving resources, money, perhaps using those resources very wisely across, for example, partnering with other departments on projects within a watershed basin. We want to implement high quality, data-driven, an innovative program through continual improvement. We're going to continually adjust and adapt what we learn and what we do. Be good stewards of staff, budgetary, and environmental resources. And again, you see connections with our mission as well throughout this critical success factors. Build trust. This is so important with the community. We are here working with the community. Building that trust is so important. We want engagement. And need that. We want to heighten awareness and also provide outreach and education opportunities. With that brief introduction, again, thanks for the chance to talk about watershed planning. It's a topic that I really enjoy and have been fortunate to be involved with for a number of years. I'm very, very excited about how we're continually growing in our integrated approach to watershed planning and how it really can benefit all of the things that we do in stormwater. At this point, I'll turn it over to Barbara. Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you, Scott. Good afternoon, everybody. Hope you're doing well. It's good to see you all virtually. Next, we're going to talk about the watershed study prioritization process and a little bit of history. Most of the watersheds in the city were done back in the 90s, so on average over 20 years old. The hair snipe study, for example, was done in 1994. So, a lot's changed since then. We've got some emerging opportunities like GSI and the focus on aging infrastructure. Technology has changed over that time, so we can more easily evaluate integrated solutions. Also, equity is a big focus for us, and also public involvement and engagement. So a few years ago, Stormwater recognized that. We launched the Integrated Watershed Planning Project to help us build the framework for watershed studies. And this hair snipe study builds upon that framework. So we're just starting to refresh the studies, and hair snipe is the first on the list for a couple reasons that we'll talk about next. Next slide, please. All right, so last year, we developed a watershed prioritization process, and we anticipate this process being performed annually and evolving as our program evolves. So we prioritized each watershed based on a number of factors like age, capital project backlog, nutrient loadings, and water quality concerns. And so for each watershed, a rating of 1 through 5 was assigned for each of those factors, and then the factors were averaged to get a total for each watershed. So with this prioritization methodology, a few watersheds popped to the top. Hair snipe was one, Pigeon House was another, Big Branch, Beaver Dam. And we picked hair snipe for the first study because we have some high priority projects on our CIP to address street flooding and structural flooding. And we've had consultants take a preliminary look at those project areas, and they recommended a larger, more holistic approach. So for these reasons, we picked hair snipe. And our intent is to look at this process annually and update it. For example, we're just getting results back from our asset management program, and we'll incorporate that into the framework. We're building our stream and riparian program, so we'd like to incorporate that into our prioritization process. We also want to make sure we're incorporating equity concerns. And SMAC feedback. So if you have any feedback on the prioritization or like to discuss it further, we've got time at the end of this presentation to do that. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so Hair Snipe Basin is located in Northwest Raleigh, if you're familiar with that area. We've got Strickland Road is the boundary to the top. Creedmoor Road is the boundary to the east. We've got 70 Glenwood Avenue, kind of going southwest on that map. And then Leesville Road is roughly the boundary to the west. And right in the middle, we have Lakeland. Next slide, please. And like I mentioned, there were a number of high priority projects already in our CIP. This is an example of Whispering Branch. It has yard and street flooding. Next slide, please. The next picture is from the Battleford area, where we had yard and structural flooding. Next slide, please. We also have the Brace Ridge area to the north with yard and street flooding and some garage flooding. Next slide, please. And we know there were other areas of concern. We don't have them all on this map, but a big part of our study is gathering public feedback. And so we understand the needs of the community. So I'd just like to mention a few of the areas where citizens have contacted us regarding problems. We know there's flooding concerns in Nebworth Court, the Brittany Woods community, and Winthrop Drive. Also some stream erosion, Pickwick Drive and Dreamy Way Court. And I did want to acknowledge that in the chat, we did receive a comment about flooding on Brittany Woods community. So I did want you to know that, that this is an area that we will be studying in the Harris Knife study. And I think this is also on the drainage assistance list as well. All right, so next we'll just talk about some of the key aspects of the Harris Knife scope. Next slide, please. The project's kicking off this month and we expect it to last 18 months. The consultant helping us with this effort is Brown and Caldwell. Next slide, please. All right, so here are some of the key tasks in the Harris Knife study. We're developing a watershed equity framework that we can use on this study and on future studies. Public outreach is a big component, water quantity and quality modeling, stream assessments, MS4 asset management. This is going to be done by city staff, but we hope to incorporate the recommendations into the Harris Knife plan. And then the results of this study will be combined into a phased capital improvements plan to address conveyance, water quality, stream and riparian area opportunities, and aging infrastructure. So this project is serving two purposes. We want to develop the plan for Harris Knife, but we're also using this project to further our integrated master planning effort and develop water planning guidance documents that can be applied to future studies. Okay, now we've got a slide on each one of these tasks to talk about it in more detail. Next slide, please. Can you go back up? I think we might have missed one. Okay, thank you. All right, so we understand that equity concerns are very important to City Council and to SMAC, and they're very important for the watershed planning process. And equity can be incorporated into all phases of the planning effort, such as equitable engagement, needs and opportunities analysis, site selection, and project design. So for these reasons, the first task in our project is to develop an equity framework that can be applied to this Harris Knife study and to future watershed studies. And we have a lot of activities planned. These are listed on the slide. We're going to hear from the city's Office of Equity and Inclusion on their goals and priorities. We're also going to coordinate with other departments in the city on what they're doing to advance equity in their programs so that we may learn from that. And then our consultant, Brown and Caldwell, will also present precedents and best practices of equity efforts from other cities. From there, we have a collaborative workshop to develop the components of the equity framework. And then the deliverable is an actionable plan on how we can incorporate equity considerations into watershed planning. So we did have envisioned that we would come back to SMAC in the fall to get your feedback on the equity framework. All right, next slide, please. All right, so public outreach. So establishing the public outreach strategy is a really key component of our program. You know, one of the critical success factors that Scott talked about is to build trust and engage the community so that we can better understand their level of service needs and expectations. So stormwater staff will be working with communications and our consultant to create a comprehensive public outreach strategy. And some of the elements of that strategy are listed on the slide. We have a project website, which has been posted. There's a link at the end of this presentation, and that will be updated regularly. We also have a public survey that will be going out to get feedback on flooding, erosion issues, or other stormwater concerns in Harris Neck Basin. And then we're having 3 public meetings as part of this project. The first one is after the survey so that we can get feedback from folks. And then we have 2 meetings planned at the end so we can get feedback on recommendations. We're also planning to implement story maps on this project so that we can show progress and needs, opportunities, and projects on a map for folks to look at. Right, so next we'll talk a little bit about the modeling effort. As Scott mentioned, one of the key components of our study is to deliver integrated projects. And one way that we're doing this is considering both conveyance and water quality when we develop our projects. So we know we have flooding and conveyance concerns, so we will be developing an H&H model. And that model will be calibrated to flows in the system. So right now there are 2 flow monitors out in Harris Neck Basin, and they're collecting readings. We also have some water quality objectives in Harris Neck, including nutrient reduction, adding water quality retrofits, developing ways to address the 303D listed impairment, prevent those. And so this project includes selection of a water quality modeling tool. And the idea is that the conveyance and water quality will be looked at together so that we can develop integrated projects. All right, next slide, please. Another goal for this project is evaluating GSI and SCM retrofit opportunities. And we had several potential opportunities identified in the previous study, which will be looked at again. And we also have new opportunities in the basin. One example is the house on Winthrop Drive that was recently purchased due to structural flooding. And we were intending to evaluate this as a possible SCM retrofit. All right, next slide, please. We're also looking at a stream and riparian assessment. We know we have problems with stream erosion in the watershed. And so our consultant will help us develop a desktop model where we look at factors in GIS to help pinpoint areas where we need to do a more detailed assessment. And we're looking at piloting a few field inspection techniques, in-person field inspection, and also video inspection. So at the end of this, we'll have a list of potential areas for stream restoration, and that will help inform our DA and water quality programs. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so we know we want to incorporate aging infrastructure considerations into our integrated planning effort. We're wrapping up the first phase of our MS4 asset management program. We've got a draft risk model that shows priorities for constructed assets. And so we'll be taking a look at the risk matrix and hair snipe and working with our transportation field services staff to inspect the highest priority structures and incorporating recommendations into the hair snipe plan. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so at the end of the Harris Snipe study, we hope to have an equity framework for future studies, connections with an engaged public. This will help us better understand the level of service needs and expectations so we can set our budgets and priorities. projects with integrated solutions, so water quantity, quality, stream and riparian projects, and addressing aging infrastructure. And we'll put all this together in a phased capital improvements program for hair snipe, and then integrate this into our overall CIP. And so we'll also have the procedures documents so we can apply this methodology and lessons learned to future studies. Next slide, please. Okay, so we'll mention some next steps for the hair snipe basin and then for the overall watershed planning program. So next slide. So for hair snipe, we're kicking off the project this month, and we've got a busy fall. You know, we're starting right away on the equity framework. We'll be releasing a survey in the fall and have a public meeting. We also intend to come back to SMAC in the fall with an update on the equity framework. And then the study overall is 18 months. So fall of next year, 2022, we'll start to set up those public meetings to review recommendations. And then we'll implement the projects as funding allows. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so next steps for the overall planning program. We are continuing to work on our integrated master planning framework. So we've got two tasks that I wanted to mention. We have a project to further develop our hydraulic modeling framework so it can be applied consistently across watershed studies. That effort is ongoing and it'll be applied to hair snipe. The second is we have a task to look at updating the intensity, duration, frequency analysis curves. We know that storms are getting larger and more intense, and so our consultant will be incorporating rainfall from the past few years and updating those curves. And we do have a SMAC update associated with that effort as well. We'll continue to refine the watershed prioritization process. And we'll be implementing watershed studies as funding allows. We'll be updating our process, coming up with our new list of priorities, and starting that conversation on where to go next. All right, next slide, please. All right, so I'd like to just open it up for discussion and feedback.
Any commissioners care to share your thoughts? So, trying to not sound like a stupid question here, but since I haven't witnessed one of these watershed plans going forward, can you tie this back into? We have somebody else coming on. Can you tie this back into some of the day-to-day of what the stormwater program and the SMAC are reviewing, the outcomes of the study, and how that turns into actionable information? Does this affect like project prioritization when it comes to drainage assistance projects and things like that?
That's a good question. Thank you for asking that. And so I think may have alluded to this, but watershed planning does tend to involve a lot of the different programs in stormwater. And so, for example, we will have a plan to address the conveyance issues that have been identified at Whispering Branch, Battleford, Brace Ridge, and other areas. And those projects will be folded into our CIP. With the stream and riparian assessment program, we're going to be looking where erosion is problematic. And that information will be fed to our water quality program and DA program. And I think as we get that information in, we can come back to you with some results on where that's headed. I'll mention there is another effort to look at the stream and riparian area, a joint project with USGS and NC State. So Hare Snipe and that other project are going in parallel and will inform each other. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. And, you know, at the end of the study and adoption of a plan, does that feed into land use planning decisions? Or might it feed into those types of decisions about further development in the watershed and that kind of thing? Or is that not a potential outcome here?
Here, I'll jump in on that if I may, Barbara. Mr. Chair, I think there are a couple of ways that the watershed planning outcome could impact. Certainly, when we have areas of known structural flooding, the UDO provides that more stringent stormwater controls would be required on development upstream of that specific known area. And so the watershed plan may help us identify additional areas of known structural flooding that perhaps haven't been documented in the past that would be documented and then considered as part of the plan review process. As well, and this is something that we are continuing to work with the planning department on, is improving as part of the rezoning process an understanding of known stormwater issues in the planning report. I know Ben Brown has been working with the planning department on doing this, and so where there are known stormwater issues, raising those as part of the rezoning process so that possible rezoning conditions could be considered that would help address those areas. And this is an area of overlap, obviously, with the GSI plan, where we made a similar suggestion that we could develop maybe a template of potential stormwater or GSI related conditions that could be chosen by the applicant, the rezoning applicant, to include, to try to address any known stormwater problems in the vicinity or downstream of the rezoning. So it does all play into this planning process as a way of increasing awareness. As Barbara said, public engagement and outreach will be an important part. So we do hope to learn more from the community on issues and concerns that they have in the watershed as part of that process as well. So all of these things, I think, will give us better documentation, a better understanding. Barbara, for example, mentioned we did have a chat, and I'll get into a little bit more detail, Mr. Chair, if that's okay, because this chat came in after the public comment process, but it was from Ms. Gerhart representing the Brittany Woods Association, and reporting some known flooding issues in that vicinity, culvert that runs under Lynn Road in Queen Anne's. And this is an issue, as Barbara mentioned, is on our drainage assistance program or priority list already. So it's a known issue, but we'll continue to look for additional documentation of that the community may have that will help us prioritize where improvements to address those types of flooding problems would fall within our overall capital improvements and drainage assistance program. So another example, I think, of where we can get additional information.
Thank you. That all sounds pretty obvious to me now, but I appreciate you taking the time. So plan reviewers from Stormwater would utilize the watershed plan in the process of examining individual development projects for rezoning, for UDO compliance, that kind of thing.
They would. There's a few ways that they take that information. One is in our drainage complaint database. They look at that database every time they do plan reviews to look at downstream node problem areas, and that's how they know how to interpret the UDO if more stringent requirements are made. And this ties into another element. Barbara mentioned the modeling framework. One element of that framework is going to be to help support our desires to become a cooperating technical partner with FEMA, whereby the city takes over responsibility for updating our own flood maps. And that gives us the ability to define floodplains in smaller areas, less than the 1 square mile area that is currently defined by FEMA, in areas where we wish to do that. And our watershed study process would be part of that floodplain mapping process. And that information is also reviewed and considered as part of the plan review process.
Thank you. Other commissioners with questions? Well, I hate to monopolize the floor, but how often, how many watershed plans can we work through per quarter century, or whatever the unit of measurement is that's appropriate? I know we've talked about this in the level of service discussions and so forth, but just as a refresher.
Yeah, that's a good question, and one we're figuring out ourselves right now. I'd say we could come back to you with a better estimate. At one time, we averaged the cost of all the old studies and projected what it would be to complete all the watershed studies again, and it was well over $10 million just to do all those at once. But we're looking at that and looking for ways to do that efficiently. So we may have more for you when we talk about level of service discussions.
Okay. So you won't be having another one of these at the next SMAC meeting, is what I'm hearing.
Probably not next month, no. But a future SMAC meeting, yes.
Probably after I'm gone from the chair.
Next
Okay.
fiscal year, this is Scott, just to add to that, with the commission's support, and we're awaiting city council's final adoption of the level of service as well, but we've been receiving some very encouraging feedback. So with that potential higher level of service, it would allow us to accelerate the watershed studies. And I believe the number for the fiscal year 22 is $750,000, Barbara, is that right? So that's pretty significant. That'd be the largest budget for watershed planning that we've had in some time. So, that's not 10 million, that's not 15 million, but gives you some gauge of where we're at, Mr. Chair and Commission. And we're certainly looking to accelerate and move through this as quickly as we can. Another thing that we're doing, we actually had a meeting earlier today with our partners over in Raleigh Water. So where we see opportunities to do projects with our partners in the city of Raleigh, other departments, could be Raleigh Water, it could be Parks and Recreation, Cultural Resources, could be others, as well as non-city entities and the private community as well. Looking for partnerships to how to get these things done. So as we focus on stormwater projects, quote unquote, we're going to try to do this in a way that we can partner with others where it makes sense to advance multiple goals.
Mr. Chair, if I could add one more comment to that also, for the commission's awareness, something Scott said prompted that we've had a few recent conversations with the Corps of Engineers, who is currently conducting a flood study of the entire Neuse River Basin. And as part of their stakeholder outreach process, they have engaged with us, and we have shared a number of items that we're doing. We gave them a lot of information about our known flood-prone areas throughout Walnut Creek, throughout Crabtree Creek, as well as the Neuse River Basin. As a continuing part of that same conversation with the Corps, they are also coordinating with Wake County and set up a conversation between the city of Raleigh, Wake County, and the Corps to look at the Wake County maintained flood control structures that are the NRCS structures, And Lake Lynn is an example of one of those in Hare Snipe. And they're looking at whether anything could be done to all of those Wake County structures and to improve their ability to control floods, or perhaps some type of a coordinated effort in monitoring those structures regionally and taking a look at how that information could be used to improve flooding conditions as well. So some additional conversations I wanted to make the commission aware of with the Corps and with Wake County.
Great. Well, I really appreciate the update and look forward to hearing more about the public engagement process. Community is really key to this and delivering the watershed and the watershed services that the community depends on. That will be an interesting process to see how people engage and what types of attitudes and values they convey.
We'd be happy to share that.
Right. Anyone else have comments, questions on this item? Okay. Going once. Hearing none, our last agenda item is any other business that commissioners want to bring forward or. Okay. Quiet group today, but thanks for being here. If there's nothing else, then is there a motion to adjourn? Ken, second by Mark. All in favor? All right. Thanks to Wayne, all your staff, and all the commissioners. And we'll.
Thanks for the excellent feedback. We appreciate it. Very helpful. We'll keep you all in the loop as these initiatives move forward.
All right.
Good to see everyone.
See everybody in
Thanks,
June.
And can we get a copy of the presentation sent to us?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be good. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. All right, this meeting's
Thanks, everybody.
adjourned. Thanks.